Hey guys, how about a little Richmond Raceway preview with Nate Ryan and Dale Jarrett? I'm Dave Burns. Nate, you have watched this track for a long time and you've seen some successes and some drivers who just can never get a handle on it. Who are you watching as the series heads back to the short track and Richmond in particular?
Well, looking at the short track so far this year, Dave, I mean, technically this is the third short track race. I know there was Bristol Dirt and there was the Wilkesboro All-Star race, but in terms of points races in the Cup Series this year, you've had Richmond, you've had Martinsville. And when you look at the Richmond results earlier this season, it was 3 Chevys in the top 3. So I'm really curious to see how Toyota does at this track, particularly Martin Truex Jr. He was 11th in the first race there. Christopher Bell was the highest finishing Toyota in the first race at Richmond earlier this year. He was 4th, but Toyota has been on such a run recently with Truex, with Denny Hamlin at Pocono. After opening the season with no victories in the first 5 races, they've won virtually half the races since then. So Toyotas are who I'm going to be keeping my eye on here at Richmond, and I'd look for Truex and the rest of the Gibbs camp to be strong.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there, Nate. You've got it right. I think that the Toyotas have shown right now that they have a little bit more at every different type of track than the other 2 manufacturers. But as I look at this, it kind of opens my eyes that I would not be surprised to see any one of the 3 manufacturers win this race. And I think that on the Ford side, you obviously have to go to Kevin Harvick and probably even Brad Keselowski I'll put in there. Logano always runs well at this track and has won. But I think that's the Ford hopes. And there's just a whole contingent of Chevrolets that you're going to have to deal with. So I think this is going to be fascinating. I like this race better in the daylight where the track can go through changes. It's going to be hotter and slicker, a lot of adjustments by the drivers. So I think it puts a more entertaining race there. And there's just one driver that you have to always look at when you come here, even though maybe not recently as much, and we'll see what happens. But Kyle Busch's record at this racetrack is just right at phenomenal. The way that he's gone about this in his 35 starts, I mean, it's just incredible how he finishes these races. I think he has 6 wins in the Cup Series there. It's just amazing to watch him maneuver here. So, can he get up and be a part, not just the Hendrick cars, but he can do that. The other driver at Chevrolet that you have to look at, well, probably 2, but Chase hasn't won here yet, but he runs well. But Alex Bowman does have a win here, and that's what it's going to take for him to get in the playoffs.
So, DJ, you mentioned the daylight, and I do like the racing better. What I don't like is you can't see the sparks and the fireworks as well in the daytime. But I have a feeling after Pocono, the drivers are going to provide some of that. You think anybody exacts some revenge at Richmond this weekend?
Yeah, that's always something, immediately after things happen. We had a lot of things happen at Pocono, and we can go back even further to people still trying to think about a payback. I don't know that anybody's going into this race thinking about a payback, but I do think that we go in with a number of drivers thinking that they're going to make life difficult if they're around that adversary of theirs. So this is the perfect example and perfect track for that to happen. Very racy, wide, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to occupy the same space at some time. So I look for a lot of action in this. I know we tend to get a lot of green flag racing to end this race, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of bumping and rubbing here. So be interesting to see how that affects these drivers and the playoff standings.
Yeah, DJ, the moniker doesn't seem to be used quite as often as it once was, but this is the action track. That's what Richmond, and when it was opened, built by Paul Sawyer, I mean, that was what it was founded on, was those principles. But we haven't seen that kind of payback action on short tracks since the next gen came into play last season. So I think this race could be a real test of where short track racing is in the Cup Series in 2023. And can drivers exact revenge like they could before? I agree that there are a lot of feuds that are simmering after Pocono, and throughout this season, there's a lot of emotions that could boil over. I think the question for me will be, will the cars allow it? Will drivers be able to mix it up like they normally can at Richmond?
We know one thing, it will be hot like the rest of the country. Make sure and tune in for Richmond Raceway on Sunday.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.